Welcome to BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here tonight with my partner, Dan Youngblood, through Zoom. And tonight, Dan, our special guest is Devon Mann, the head football coach of Santo, the red-hot Santo Wildcats.
Yeah, the 6-0 Santo Wildcats. Yes. They had the bye week for the first week of the District 8-2A Division II schedule, but this is a team that's playing very, very well. They have been really all year long. So they've got a lot to be excited about right now in Santo, and I know Coach Mann is. So I'm excited to talk to him about what he's seen from this group. This is a group that had a lot of players back from last year's team, which was very young and very inexperienced. And now you're starting to see the growth that team made last year into this season, and they're playing really, really well. So yes. This is a fun team to follow. I'm sure the Santo fans are having a blast watching this team have the success it is, and they've got some big games coming up. Sharing a district with Albany, I know that's a matchup that a lot of people are talking about. So
yes,
this is going to be this has already been a fun Santo season, and I'm excited to talk to Coach Mann about it.
Before we jump into this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stanford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And with that, let's talk a little bit about what went on last week. Our Big Country Preps game of the week. I went down to Tuscola for the matchup between an undefeated Early team and an undefeated Jim Ned team. We knew going in that Early had to have it fall their way early on to gain some confidence and believe that they could compete with the state champs. It didn't happen. They got off to a bad start. Jim Ned scored on their first drive just like that and then got a pick six. And before you know it, Early's on the ropes. And when you got a young team, an upstart team that's trying to gain confidence at that level, man, that's tough. And they did not overcome it. They lost 48-7.
Yeah, and that's one you always worry a little bit when you've got kind of an upstart program that is experiencing that type of success for the first time in a long time against a program that's kind of more used to that success. And obviously in Jim Ned, you're talking about defending state champion. But I think the one thing that we need to take from this is that, yes, Early struggled in that game. They were not ready to take the field necessarily with that Jim Ned team last week. However, that doesn't define their season. I think that just because they struggled in that game doesn't mean that what they've done to that point doesn't matter, or that they don't have big, things that they can accomplish going forward. I think this is just a situation where, like you said, Jim Ned at this stage is a better football team. And I think it was also a situation where kind of that snowball got rolling downhill, and it just when the momentum gets against you like that, it's not hard for a game to get away from you. And we've seen that happen to good teams in the past. And I think that's what happened to Early. And hopefully if they'll take that from that, to take what they're meant to learn from that experience and move forward. Because I do think this team has talent. I think if they can just kind of, move past that game and continue, that they've got some big things on the horizon. But that was one where I think Jim Ned also showed what they've got. I mean, Jim Ned is the number one team in the state for a reason. They're very, very good, and they're
outstanding. Well, Coach Fanning said that's their best game they played all year. When you consider the competition going up against an undefeated team, it's the first time they've really put together a full game, just about, and really showed that they're capable of doing. That's an exceptional team.
And I think a big part of that, and this happens when you've got teams at that level, is they've been good all year. But they had some games where they maybe didn't play at their highest level. They're in district now, and you can kind of see they flipped the switch and hit another level. They hit another gear. So I think that anyone who kind of had any questions at all about this Jim Ned team, I think they answered a lot of them last week. This is a very good, an exceptional football team, and I think that this is a team with a state championship ceiling again this year, and they kind of showed that this past week. But I think it was, again, a really good win for Jim Ned. An unfortunate, kind of the way that Early lost. I'm sure there are lots of things it could be a discouraging experience. Hopefully it won't be for them. Hopefully they'll build on it because, like I said, this team has plenty to play for down the stretch.
Another big game, Sweetwater with a crucial win over their arch rival Snyder in the Mustang Bowl. I think we both had Snyder winning that ball game. We thought that Snyder would get enough defensive stops to beat Sweetwater even on the road, but Sweetwater is really coming on now offensively. I think they're getting more accustomed to Coach Lucas' offensive system. It's not that much different than when they were running before, but so it's kind of like fitting like a glove now. They're at midseason form and they're looking pretty dang good.
Yeah, to me, I think that was my biggest takeaway is that you look at what Sweetwater offense has done the last 2 weeks with putting up 70 points against Eastland, and then this past week having their big game against a really good Snyder defense. I think what the biggest takeaway I've had is that the Sweetwater offense is rolling. Yeah. They've got some issues defensively, and they're going to have to, if they're going to challenge for a district championship in that district, they're going to have to get some of those things figured out. But offensively, they're playing at a very, very high level right now, which is good to see. It's good to see the improvement there because they've got a lot of talent offensively. When you look at the quarterback position with Leo Halsey, Harrison Foster is one of the area's most explosive receivers. They've got some big time weapons offensively, and you're starting to see them really put it together. And then for Snyder, I think it's kind of a similar situation where that loss, I'm sure, stings. You don't want to lose a 1-score game to your arch rival. But at the same time, that's a good football team too, and they're going to have plenty of opportunities to show that as they wind down district.
Well, a 42-37 win over that Snyder football team. That that Snyder football team, that defense that they had held Jim Ned to 22 points a couple weeks back. That is a quality defensive football team and a physical football team that can run the football really well. So that's a big win for Sweetwater. That's one that we did not pick. No. So one other ball game that I want to mention, we had Stephenville going down to Waco in probably the most impressive performance that we saw, that we've seen actually maybe this year, going down there to play Waco La Vega and coming away with a 35-7 win on the road in their house against a team that nearly knocked off Argyle. Stephenville has one of, as we say, those teams this year. That is a ball club. If they get past Melissa, which is a deadly team in their region, if they can get past them, we could see the Yellow Jackets in Arlington. It would not surprise me a bit.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, this is a really tough region in 4A-D1. I don't think there's a team in the state, or in this region rather, that's playing. In fact, I don't think there's a team in the state in that entire classification that's playing better football than Stephenville is right now.
No.
When you look at what they've done offensively all year long, and then the improvement they've made on the defensive side of the football is just enormous. And that's the thing. I was a little hesitant to really buy in on Stephenville before this season because of that, just because they had struggled the way they had on defense. But they've answered and fixed any issues they had defensively. They have absolutely fixed that. They shut out La Vega for a half last week, which doesn't happen. I mean, La Vega's got a really good physical offense. Yes. They don't get held to 7 points very often. Yeah. I mean, this is a really good football team, one of the state's premier programs at that classification, and Stephenville absolutely took it to them. I think this was a statement win for the Yellow Jackets. I think we all knew how good they were. You and I have both seen them this year. And I think this was the one that says that it really puts the rest of the region and the state on notice. And I think they've got another opportunity to do that later in district when they play Midlothian Heritage, which is also a very, very good football team. So right now, if I were picking, I think Stephenville is my favorite to get to state. I think this team is playing that well. If they can stay on track, stay healthy, and continue to play at the level they're playing at, I don't think there's anybody that stops them.
I said it 3 weeks ago. I think Stephenville is the best football team in the big country at any classification in 2021. I think they would beat any football team that we have. They are that good. The thing is, you can, in that region, though, you cannot take anything for granted. You can't.
No, it's a brutal region.
Melissa's out there, but then you're going to have to get probably through La Vega again. There's Argyle that's out there. Yeah. Heritage is out there. So, even if you do well in district, you're going to have to beat some of those teams again, going through and trying to get to Arlington. So there's no guarantees, but my gosh, they're looking good.
Yeah, I like the way they're playing.
They can throw the football all over the place. And this is the best defensive team that we've seen out of Stephenville in a number of years. They're playing lights out defensively. There were a few other interesting ball games around the area. Actually, there were a number of interesting ball games. That's always the case when district play starts, because the level of importance is amped up. I was surprised at how difficult a time Dublin had with a winless Comanche team. Comanche came out ready to play and really could have won that ball game.
Yeah, I think that was a really big win for Dublin because they did trail for much of it. They came out with a 26-21 victory in that one. And that was a big one for them because I think that they've got an opportunity here to compete for a district championship in that league. So if they're going to do that, they really needed to get by Comanche, and they were able to do that in a little bit of a rivalry game there. So I think that was a big win for them. And I think it was a big showing for Comanche as well, because they have struggled some this year to be in a position there at the start of district to compete with what should be one of the favorites in that league. So I think this is one that both teams can build on.
And for Comanche to hold an explosive Dublin offense to 26 points, That's a step forward for the Indians there. That was a well-played game for those guys. Biggest surprise of the night for me, Brady going into Ballinger. The way Ballinger was playing, they were on a roll, had won 4 straight games. Brady had been struggling. They lost to Dublin. They lost to Ozona. And they didn't look very good doing it. They had a couple of games in a row when they just were not bringing their A game. They go into Ballinger and beat him 54-41. Neither myself or you saw that one coming. That was an impressive win. And now don't start pointing out before the season. You can't go backward. Well, we have a limit on how far back you can go. That's a week.
No, here's what I say. I picked
that one coming a week ago.
No, here's what I say. I picked Ballinger to win based on what Ballinger had showed in the weeks leading up to that, and based on what Brady had struggled the previous weeks. However, I think this Brady team has that type of ability. It's just a matter of tapping into it. And I think they did that last week. I think they got JD Ibarra going, ran the ball really, really well. I think the important thing for this Brady team, because they do have, and I picked them to win that district. And the reason I did is they have the ability to play at that level. The question is, can they do it consistently? And I think that's going to be the question going forward, because to beat that Ballinger team, Ballinger was playing really well coming in.
Yes.
So that's a really big win for them. Now they got to build on it and be consistent.
And score 54 points on the road against them. Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. But there's 2 different Brady ball clubs here. There's the one that beat Ballinger that night. There's the team that started 2-0 that beat Ballinger that night. And then there's the team that had a mistake-filled disaster against Dublin and lost to Ozona. It's like night and day. The team that I saw is not the team that beat Ballinger that night. Clearly it's a much better team. When they clean up their mistakes, they're a much better team.
Yeah, and that's kind of been their issue the past several years, is that their ceiling has been pretty high. The problem is their floor has been pretty low. They've just got to find a way to narrow that gap and find that level of consistency, because this team, particularly, they've got a good, big offensive line, and they've got a great running back in JD Ibarra. If they can get him going, get that running game going, they've got a chance, I think, to be pretty good. They've just got to find a way, like I said, week in and week out, to have that same type of effort. But this was a really big win for them. This, I think, puts them right in position now to compete for that district championship, because like we've talked about, Ballinger was playing very well. So this was a good win for Brady, and now Ballinger's got to bounce back, because they've got an opportunity still to do some special things in district as well.
Okay, now I did pick a couple of upsets last week. I hit the mark on one of them, and I was the lone wolf to do it. I picked Heiko to win at Cross Plains.
Yeah.
I did. I got that one. That one, but I missed Stanford over Hanson. Everybody else got that one right. I had Stanford winning in an upset. I thought if they could clean up their mistakes, that they could win on their home field. It didn't happen. Hanson goes down there and wins the district opener for both those teams.
Yeah, and we'll start with the Cross Plains Heiko game. That was a huge win for Heiko, and I think the big thing about that was that they were able to intercept Cade Purvis 4 times, return one of those for a touchdown, because Cross Plains actually outgained them by a pretty hefty margin, by about 50 yards. Neither team did a whole lot offensively, but Heiko was able to win despite gaining about 173 yards because they were able to force turnovers on defense. That was a really big win for them, I think, just from a program standpoint, because Cross Plains has a good team. Cross Plains has a good team. I think this was a big one for Heiko.
Playoff team.
Yeah.
Cross Plains a playoff team. That's a step forward for Heiko. That's a nice win for those guys.
And I think this one establishes Heiko now as a playoff team. They've got to win one more game that they're going to be favored in to get into the playoffs, and I think they'll do that. So a huge win for Heiko. Cross Plains will have to clean up some of those mistakes going forward, because they don't get any time to rest. They've got Santo coming up this week, so that's going to be a tough matchup too. But you got that pick right, and that was a good pick for you. Heiko played a really good game, particularly on the defensive end.
Hanson going to Stanford. What's your assessment of that one after having taken a look at it? Hanson had to come from behind to win that ball game. I heard that score in the second half, and I'm like, yeah, I might hit that upset pick. It didn't happen. Hanson with a couple of late scores took it.
Yeah, and I think in that case, that's kind of been a problem for Stanford this year. They've had some trouble with turnovers and with some mistakes and things like that. And I think Hanson, the reason I picked Hanson, I think Hanson is just a little bit ahead of where Stanford is right now. I think both those teams, I think, will end up in the playoffs by the end of the season. But for me, I thought that Hanson had been tested really well in the non-district portion of their schedule, had had a couple of nice accounts, have given a couple of nice accounts of themselves. And I think this was a big win for them because they're going to have some tough games coming forward too, with when you talk about a district that has Holly and Forsan in it. So sure. They needed to get this one in order to kind of put themselves in pretty good position to make the playoffs. But like I said, I think both those teams will end up in the playoffs by the end of it. But yeah, Hanson was able to take that one.
One of the picks last week that I hemmed and hawed about, and I did state this, I did tell you, far be it from me to ever say I told you so, but I did say that San Saba was tougher than their record had indicated. Yeah. They were better. If you looked at their schedule and their slow progression that they've been making against a tough schedule, once they started playing in district, they were going to be tough. And yeah. I looked at that Goldthwaite game, and man, I hemmed and hawed on that one too. That was a tough pick. And I finally went with Goldthwaite. And as it turned out, I mean, that was a great ball game, 28-26. Goldthwaite did win that game. San Saba is still out there as a threat for a playoff spot. They are much better than that winless record.
Yeah, and you and I had talked about that last week, and I think we both agreed that based on the schedule that San Saba had played, and San Saba's record is what it is, but based on the schedule that they had played, there are a few teams at that classification that have been tested more than San Saba has. So I think that was that would have been a big win for them had they gotten it. But I do think that at this point, when you look at San Saba, I think you've got to consider them a team that at this point can compete for a district or for a playoff spot. They're basically now going to come down to that game against Winters. Can they beat Winters for that fourth spot? But in that regard, I think this was a really big win for Goldthwaite. I think Goldthwaite has kind of felt that they're an improved football team. They've shown on the field they're an improved football team, but I think they needed this win to kind of solidify their spot as that third team in the district. And I think now we look at it, and I think you've got kind of Winters and San Saba competing for that fourth spot. But San Saba, they absolutely can win that game, and it'll be interesting to see if they do.
All right, and one final ball game I'd like to mention, and we both kind of looked at this as a playoff eliminator. It was just a crucial ball game because of the level of difficulty overall through the district 3-3A D1. You know, when you got Jim Ned in there and Wall and Early in there in the mix, this was a very important game. Breck against Clyde. Breck goes down to Clyde and comes away with a 44-29 win. This was crucial. For Breck to come away with that win. They could ill afford to drop that one. Now, you know what, with them winning and scoring 44 points in the process, I think Breck and Early, that matchup looks interesting now. It looks interesting. Some people may say, no way. Yes way. Breckenridge is going to be a problem for Early. It's going to be a competitive ball game.
And honestly, I think Breckenridge could be a problem for Wall. I think that'll be a more competitive game than a lot of people expect. So
you might be right on that.
I think the 4 playoff spots, I mean, I think Jim Ned is obviously, they've separated themselves from the rest, but I think the other 3 spots is going to be interesting. There are going to be a lot of competitive games played there, and it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I do agree that with that win last week, Breckenridge, now if they can beat TLCA, which by every indicator they will, that puts them in the playoffs, which I think is a really good deal for Breckenridge. They've had kind of a hard luck season. Their record going into last week was only 1-4. They'd lost 4 games in a row, but they had played a brutal schedule, and it actually done some really nice things in that schedule. They gave Cisco all they wanted, could have won that game.
Yes.
They played Eastland well. They played Holiday well for about a half. And Holiday's a great football team. So they played a lot of really good teams and played them well, and it just been stacking up losses just because they weren't quite able to beat them. So I think this was a big win for them to get that confidence level up, and now it's going to be interesting to see what they do because they've got Early coming up this week and then Wall the following week, and I think both those games will be competitive. I honestly do.
Yes, absolutely. That's Breck is a threat. There's no doubt about it. They have emerged as a threat. They played very well, and offensively, how much better are they this year than last year by just tweaking the offense and going with a little bit more tempo, throwing the football a little bit more. It's really, and of course the experience factors in there as well, but they're so much better than they were a year ago offensively. Yeah. Last year, they were lucky to score period. I think they got shut out 4 times. This year, it's a completely different story.
Yeah. Dramatic improvement for them. And then for Clyde, it's been a tough year for Clyde in Danny Dudgeon's first season. They've got a young squad. They did not return a whole lot of lettermen from last year's team. So it is kind of a rebuilding phase for them. But I thought that they gave a pretty good account of themselves against a good Breckenridge team this past week as well. That they weren't able to. I mean, they'd cut it to one score on several occasions. They were never able to get over the hump, but they made that a game. And while this probably does eliminate them from playoff consideration, I think it is something they can build on. I think you'll see them get their first win here in a little bit against TLCA, and hopefully they can just can continue to be competitive the rest of the way. This is such a tough district. It's going to be hard to get wins, but I think if they can build on that Breckenridge game, beat TLCA this week, I think maybe against early in Wall, we'll see what they can do.
All right. Now you went to a couple of local ball games last week. You got to see Cooper. You got to see Wiley. Quick assessment of both of those games that you attended.
Yeah, Cooper played an overmatched Arlington Heights team and just really, really dominated, particularly on the defensive side of the football. Going into the final drive of that game, that was a Thursday night game. Going into the final drive, they were on pace to set the school record for yards allowed. They it was that good. I mean, they had held them under 30 yards for the game to that point. And eventually, or I think it was right around 31 yards, something around there. And they were able, Arlington Heights on their final drive, to get the yardage they needed to avoid a record setting night, but it was still a shutout for Arlington Heights. And Cooper did enough offensively to have a dominating win and a 43-0 win. And then for Wiley, they dropped their opener to Wichita Falls Rider 34-19 in a game that was much, much closer than the final score would indicate. That was a 2-point game in going into the fourth quarter. Ryder scored with about 7 minutes left to go up 9, to go up 2 scores. And then there was kind of an interesting deal at the end where Ryder, in an attempt to get the maximum positive points for a tiebreaker situation, they're driving in the final seconds, call a timeout with 2 seconds left to punch one in to win by 15. But that was a much closer game than a 15-point game. It was a 1-score game pretty much the entire way until Ryder was able to get that 9-point lead. And then Wiley had a couple of possessions with a chance to cut into that deeper and couldn't, but kind of a weird ending as far as points. Ryder did what they needed to do in terms of the district tiebreaker, but I think this was a good showing for Wiley. Wiley was very competitive with an undefeated Ryder team, and I think that sets them up pretty well to compete well in this district.
I don't have a problem with what Ryder did. If there's a playoff, when you have playoff tiebreakers in effect, and your max is 15, it's not like you're running up the score. You're trying to help yourself in a potential tie-breaking situation later on. I do not have a problem. Now, some people might. Yeah. I'm sure some people did, and I respect that. I personally do not. I can see them trying to go for that. Now, if you're up by 40 and you do that, I've got a problem with that. Yeah. If you're up by 30 or whatever, even if you're up by 60, I would say. If you're up by 16, it's too much.
Yeah, here's what I would say is I don't have a problem with Ryder doing it based on the rules in place. I have a problem with the rules in place incentivizing calling a timeout with 2 seconds left to punch in another touchdown when the game's already decided. So I think you're forcing coaches to decide between sportsmanship and playoff points. I think that's a dumb thing. I think there's a way to manipulate that to where you're taking that decision out of coaches' hands. Because I don't think that doesn't happen at any other level of football. In any other level of football, once you've got the game, you're kneeling out the clock and you're getting out of there. I think it's just a situation where I think you could avoid the problem altogether. But again, it's not the end of the world. Ryder was doing what they needed to do to get their points. I understand that. I just think the rules. I'm not crazy about those rules, but
I think I'm all for sportsmanship. But I think that in that instance, when you take everything into account, I don't think it's bad sportsmanship to take that tiebreaker into account and do what you have to do. I don't have a problem with it.
Here's the only other thing I would also mention is that there are a lot of coaches who wouldn't do that. And I know for a fact, like the Wiley coaching tree, Hugh Sandifer would not do that. Clay Martin would not do that. So at the same time, you're rewarding coaches who will make that decision and kind of punishing those who won't. So it is what I mean. I just think the rules, whatever. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world. It's not a huge deal. It's just kind of a sour ending to a game when you've got a team calling a timeout with 2 seconds left. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Nobody gets madder on the. I'm telling you right now, nobody gets more angry than me on the sidelines if I see one team rubbing it in and running up the score. Nobody gets more angry than I do. But in that instance, I don't have a problem with it.
I understand it. It just. Here's my thing. I think if you're going to do it, go ahead and score on the play. Go ahead and score before you need to call a timeout, because there's just something sorry about calling a timeout with 2 seconds left. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
All right, and with that, it's just about time to bring on Santo head football coach Devon Mann. But before we do that, we need to thank our sponsors. beginning obviously with Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts throughout the school year. Also for the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is for the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant of Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge, one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give him a shout at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And finally, Phil Hill of the Abilene Realtors Group, big supporter of local athletics. If you're in the market, give him a call at 325-669-5153 or visit his website at philhillproperties.com. And with that, it is just about time to bring on Devon Mann, the head football coach of Santo, currently 6-0. The Wildcats are playing quite well, and they've played some pretty stout football teams. Are they playing well enough to be a threat to that Albany team? We shall see. But if there's one team in that league that might be, it's this group from Santo, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're playing at a really high level, and a high enough level that some people are starting to wonder that. I think that's going to be a huge test for them. Albany is a huge test for anyone in this region in that classification. But it is neat that we're able to have that conversation and potentially have that as a matchup of unbeatens when it comes. But Santos got to do some work before then, and we'll talk to Coach Mann about that district race. And it looks like he's just about ready to join us.
And joining us now via Zoom, Santo head football coach Devon Mann. Coach, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Coach, let's talk about how the season's going so far. Off to a great start, undefeated at this point. Tell us what the keys have been.
I think the biggest thing is experience helping us. I know we talked about that in the summer a little bit, but last year being a huge learning curve and a bunch of kids cutting their teeth, and I think that experience has really played over. But still, you kind of enter a season and you kind of never know. But to kind of see the growth in our kids and the buy-in and the believe and they've set some goals there at the beginning of two-a-days that, we really don't like to call goals. We like to call them missions. Goals will kind of let you out of something as you're working toward them if you don't reach a certain level. So really just that buy-in and that focus and experience is just been huge and having a lot of a few seniors trickled in there and a lot of juniors on the squad right now, and some sophomores playing well for us. And even one of the questions was a kicker this year, and having a freshman kicker step up and be really big for us this year. So a lot of good things going on in Santo right now. It's been a lot of fun with a lot of community support.
And you kind of touched on our next question, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. But we talked a lot about last year's team where you were starting just so many either young kids or first-time starters out there. Just how important was it for them to have that season, get that experience, and now they have been able to kind of see all that on tape and make this the next step this year? Just talk about kind of the value of that progression.
There's kind of like a saying goes is every championship story or every success story has adversity in it. And last year was part of our adversity. And I know we've had adversity this year. But the greatest teacher is experience. And you look at us last year starting out against Rio Vista and dropping that game 14-7. And they score pretty much 2 defensive touchdowns to beat us. And there's that learning curve through that entire process. There's some times where you want to, pull your hair out, but you've got to love on those guys and keep them moving forward and keep them growing. So in order to brace that, it's really set us up to where we're at right now. And, by the end of the season last year, I challenged him. I said, go back and watch week 1 toward, and watch week 8 or week 9 and to see that level of growth and execution. So you've got these young pups from a year ago coming in as juniors, and you're not having to teach them as much scheme wise and stuff like that. They have a really good understanding of it. So you kind of hit the ground running, to whereas last year we really had to slow things down and not be and be a little bit more basic, I guess, for them to really grasp the offense and the defense, because breaking in a new quarterback and fullback a year ago, I mean, that and this offense, it's a feel. I mean, that's pretty much a marriage for those two guys, and that mesh and kind of what we're doing. So to develop that relationship and develop those guys heading into this season is huge.
And last year was definitely a growing season for you guys, but it wasn't necessarily the rebuilding season. Y'all were still able to finish with a winning record and do a lot of positive things. How important was that to kind of avoid, kind of a big step backward from a wins and loss standpoint to kind of have a higher platform to build from this year?
Everybody wants to talk about program and those kind of things. And I think years like last year put those things to the test. Because as much as we went 6-5 a year ago, we could have easily went 2-8, 3-7, 4-7, something like that. I mean, there were some close games in there. It was a pivotal moment kind of for those younger kids. And it's funny with the group of kids that we have, and a lot of people won't believe me, is none of our classes in high school had winning records in junior high. And it's part of the process. We're going to do what we do offensively and defensively at the junior high level. We're going to play two teams. We're not going to play A team or a B team. The kids are going to get experience. And when we can mix them together in classes with JVs and varsities, we tend to be successful. And I think some of those younger guys, those freshmen who were then sophomores last year, really stepped up, and they had a good class in front of them to learn from. So it was really, really big in the experience piece. But, yeah, I'm very thankful that it was a successful year, and I think some of our kids took it personal because the word out a year ago was Santo's not the Santo it used to be, team-wise and stuff like that. They're going to be the old Santo. And our kids really took that personal, and they took that to heart. And, coming from that 14-7 game, we could have been down in the dumps from a year ago, and we come in, and win the next week 21-7. Then we go beat a good Cumbie team the next week after that. And it's really rolled into this year with some early adversity with some injuries in week one versus Rye Vista. We have two kids go out in that game, and we pull off a win 16-14 or 14-12, whatever it might have been, and kind of been on a roll. Then we go into that Millsap game and find ourselves down 20-7, and to see the grit of the kids really dig in and believe in what we're doing and believe we're going to win this football game, and come back and you look up and there's 4 minutes left. We're up by 2 scores, and we ended up winning 36-33. So a lot of growing going on still, but very, very happy with where the team's at right now.
Coach, nobody who runs the flex bone doesn't like the flex bone. Everybody that runs the flex bone has a clear affinity for the offense and the option game. Tell us what drew you to this offense and this style of play.
I love it. And, Randy Thornton drew me to this style of offense. You think, coaching getting into this profession. And, talking to Randy we kind of ended up in it by an accident. And I really love it. It's the identity of our team. I'll be an option guy, some form or fashion for my career. I mean, you got to cater to your kids, so you're going to do what suits us well. But our kids have known it. And when I took over and I took the reins, it's what I knew. It's what the program knew. It's what the kids knew. And it made zero sense starting over in a new scheme and reteaching everything when something's not broke, why fix it? And but as a first year head coach stepping in, you do what you know, and then you make your tweaks and your changes and different things like that as you're moving forward. But I believe very much so in this system and for our kids and it fitting our kids right now. You look at our stat line and our kids with rushing yards, and I mean, there's not a lot of difference in a bunch of them. And it was that way a year ago. It's because it's kind of pick your poison. Which one do you want to take away? Then, if you're clicking and you're executing, somebody's going to be open and running the football down the sideline. So
what traits do a group of kids have to have for them to succeed in your system, to run the flex bone correctly? What are the traits that you're looking for?
For a quarterback, you don't have to be the most athletic guy, but you have to be a tough guy and you got to be smart. And so we're always looking for that level of toughness, because there's going to be some plays where you take a shot. As a fullback, if I have to put a trait again for anybody in this system, it's going to be toughness. just because you look at a fullback and you are getting hit every play of the game. You may be running through and the ball's pulled, but you're tackled by the linebacker coming up, meeting you in the A-gap. So just toughness, scrappiness, grit. I've talked to Daniel about this some is, when you have less talent, it's an equalizer. But when you have really good talent, I think it makes you a little bit even more dangerous. So, for us, just the grit piece of it, for kids and just being scrappy, got to be physical. And I feel like we play a pretty good physical brand of football in Santo.
And it seems like with the experience y'all gained, these kids in that system, you're starting to see the execution improve a lot. Last year, I know that the turnovers were a problem at times. Y'all seem to have cleaned up a lot of that. How would you describe the level of offensive execution you've seen from your group this year? Basing from a year ago, you're absolutely right. And we talk about that marriage and that mesh with the fullback and the quarterback, and that can be overlooked. And you think, wow, that's a pretty basic thing. Well, no, the feet have to be right on the quarterback. The fullback has to step right as he's coming through, because it's a bang, bang thing that happens. And when you have a quarterback that hadn't played quarterback pretty much in high school, he'd been a running back, he played some in junior high, and you got a fullback who's been a slot or, something like that, and you're making that transition, there's a big learning curve. So that year of experience and those guys being baptized by fire has really helped us. And then just repetition and drills and knowing what to expect and carrying the drills over from last year to this drill, or from last year to this year, has really helped Case Proctor, Sam Henderson, and Elijah Pennington right there. Just because, if you're running the midline and that quarterback doesn't clear the cylinder, or the quarterback steps back too far and the ball's on the hip, it can cause some issues, and it caused some issues a year ago, and we're seeing less of that now. So I really think that is a step in the right direction growth wise.
Coach, defensively, you're only allowing about 10.5 points per game. Are we seeing improved defensive play, or sometimes when you run the flex bone really well, one of the natural byproducts of that is improved defensive play. Are we seeing, is it both improved defensive play and more ball possession?
I think so. I think it's a little bit of both of those. I think our offense complements our defense. We're a 4-4 defense. And again, we play a physical brand on offense, and we're physical on defense. And, part of those young pups, at 2A football, you're starting on offense, good chance you're probably going to be starting on the defense as well. So carrying that over and really understanding, last year was the first year we moved from the 4-3 to the 4-4 a year ago. So they were learning a new scheme as well on the defensive side. And on paper, it could look like there's not a lot of changes there, but there really is in learning some spots. And, your outside backers were both underclassmen, first-time starters last year. So really growing that system and getting our kids familiar in it. I think we're seeing we're reaping the benefits of that in year 2 in this defense. And we made that move just from personnel standpoint. It's what fit our kids better than what we were doing in years past.
And Coach, as an assistant before and now as a head coach, you've been a big part of establishing this program's kind of tradition of success, because like you said, it didn't have a whole lot before then. Just talk about the importance, how important has that been to you to be able to establish something to where there is a tradition here to where you expect to kind of carry it on year after year after year?
Man, that's been one of the biggest things moving into this career. I knew graduating college and coming into this profession, I knew without a doubt my ultimate goal was to be an athletic director and head football coach. I didn't want to be a guy that hopped around job to job and did those kind of things. I wanted, and I'm sure a lot of guys are like this. You want to build something, you want to put your stamp on it, and you want a year in and year out program. So for that to be mentioned now and some things like that, it's huge for me. I think it's huge for this community, and I think it's huge for our kids. But just something where when we're going to off season, the kids know they know what they expect. When we go to football, they know what we're doing offensively and defensively in practice. We have our routines in, they get monotonous. But just this belief in it, just around Santo, period, school, community, coaches, what have you. There's starting to be an expectation. And there's a lot of buy-in. There's a lot of excitement. And like I said before, it's fun to be around Santo. It's a great place, and some really good things are going on right now, and we look to keep building on that.
Coach, Randy Thornton obviously has returned, and the roles are reversed now. He's an assistant. Tell us about how that's working out with the roles reversed.
Yeah, it's been really, really good. It's been really special for me, honestly. The amount of impact that he had on me. I was talking to some people about it the other day, but the impact he had on me as a person and as a coach has been really, really huge. And we both knew we wanted to coach together again one day. We didn't know how it would happen, and things work out the way they work out, and here we are. But our coaching relationship is really, really good. I know what I'm getting with Randy Thornton. He knows what he's getting with me. We're on the same wavelength. We both have our expectations and beliefs, and for somebody to step in and, go with the changes and the tweaks that we've made since he left, and to learn those and hit the ground running. I mean, he was that guy. And he came in and he said, I don't want to change a thing. He says, offensively, he says, I'm going to learn what y'all are doing, and we're going to go from there. I don't want the kids to relearn it. And I said, I'm right there with you. And that's what we've done. Him being the offensive coordinator, and having the familiarity of this system has been really, really good for us. And it was a no-brainer hire. I mean, you're not going to find a better guy than Randy Thornton, in my opinion.
Okay. And for our last question, we'll look ahead a little bit. Y'all had the bye week in the first week of district play. You got your district games starting. Obviously, down the road, you've got a clash with a really good Albany team looming. But before that, a couple of really important games. I guess just talk about kind of your thoughts on this district race and just kind of keeping your team focused for each one of these matchups.
And that's the biggest thing. And I think with any team, any classification, is keeping your kids and your community even focused on the now. And we talk to our kids is if you want to throw the word district championship game out there or anything, every one of these games is a district championship game. There's not one game that is the district championship game. You've got to take care of business every week. And if we get caught looking ahead, we're going to get in trouble, and somebody's going to clip us. And so taking care of business, it's real easy in this region and region 2. And I'd argue with you till I'm blue in the face. I'm not saying talent wise out of all classifications, but you'd be hard pressed to find another region with more, I guess, competition and gauntlet wise than region 2, 2A division 2, because it is a gauntlet, and it is easy to look ahead to other teams and some stuff like that. But we're, at Santo right now, we're focused on the here and now. We've got Cross Plains coming to town this week, and they're always a very well coached football team. They've got some really quick kids, some really good playmakers who fly around. So that's what's on Santo's radar, and that's what's going to be on our radar. We're not looking ahead to anybody. But like I said, anytime we step foot on the field, it doesn't matter what color jersey it is or what the town's name. We have the same goal every week. That's to come out with a win, and to play our brand of offense and defense, and to represent this community and to make them proud of us. So that's where our head's at moving forward. But it's been exciting so far.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. We will be keeping an eye on you. And I know we're going to run into you on the road in the very near future. We'll be at some of your games. You got some big ones coming up.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All righty, Coach. Thank you. And that was Santo head football coach, Devon Mann. Interesting to see what's going on with Santo. And as you know, I'm, an old timer. I like these old style offenses. I love the wing T. I love the flex bone. I would love the wishbone if you never see it anymore, but you really don't see it much at all anymore. But option offense, running the football, I mean, I could watch that all day long and never get tired of it.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot. My thing that I love about both high school and college football is the variety that exists in offenses. I love, or in schemes in period. I love seeing all of the different offensive schemes and all the different defensive schemes that you see at those two levels. And so I enjoy watching teams be able to have success in a number of different ways. And Coach Mann and Santo are absolutely doing that with their flexbone offense right now. So that's cool. And I think that level for a lot of programs, that is a really good fit. We've seen several of our programs have a lot of success with that. Wall has done some really remarkable things at the Class 3A level, running a similar system. So it is, option football is fun. I always like when you get one of those option teams against a spread team and see which one can kind of get their game plan established. And I think that to me is part of the really intriguing thing that you only really see at the high school level, sometimes at college with a few of those service academies, but it is fun. And it's fun. It was fun talking with Coach Mann about this Santo team. This is a really good team. They're having a very strong season. And I think he's built a program to where this has kind of become the expectation, which is pretty neat because Santo, you go back, you don't have to go back too far to see when that Santo program was struggling. And now all of a sudden they've become a consistent playoff team, and Coach Mann's been a big part of that.
And with that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that we have 3 separate subscription packages here at BigCountryPreps.com. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual year-long subscription, 12 months, where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage.
We'd also like to remind you, if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, it is available for purchase. You can purchase a digital download for just $7. And we also have prints and keepsakes available. So make sure you check those out. If you're scrolling through the site, you'll notice we take a lot of photos from these games we're at. That's something we really enjoy doing, and it's something we're proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.